Here we are on the front of our Keystone Arcadia 27 SBH. We're going to do a general tech walkthrough with you, showing you all the items on it as well as some of the operation. If you want more specific information on particular name brand appliances, even if yours differs slightly from this one, you can find that on our YouTube channel in the helpful hacks section and just search for that name brand like Furrion AC or Coleman AC or whatever, and it will give you a lot more deep dive information about that appliance. We'll start in the front here around our kingpin. We have our 7-way plug. Our 7-way plug is plugged into our vehicle and it supplies blinkers, running lights, as well as a charge line for our battery system, and it will charge our battery as we're traveling down the road. The next thing we have up here is our 12-volt breakaway. This breakaway box right here is attached to a cable. This cable end should be hooked somewhere on the truck, maybe a latch handle or something like that, never to the hitch bar, because if something happens to the hitch, the intention is for this cable to be pulled out. That pin will come out of the box and it will activate the brakes on your trailer, stopping your trailer if it is ever disconnected from your truck as a safety device. So make sure we're hooking that up properly. Under here we have our leveling for our front landing gears as well as our rear stabilizer jacks. And we also have our disconnects. Let's take a closer look at that. So here we have our controls for our landing gears, which are our 2 gears right here in the front, those legs that we would use to connect and disconnect from our towing vehicle. Extend, run the jacks down, retract, run the jacks up. We should always leave at least 5 to 6 holes showing whenever we extend these legs out and detach it from our vehicle. That way we have enough length of jack to level our unit out. So we're leveling our unit out front to back with these landing gears. If you want to level it out left to right, we need to get the stacker blocks and put them under our tires to get that straight. Then we'll go ahead and hit extend and run our jacks down and level it out front to back. From there, we'll push this button and this runs down our LCI stabilizer jacks in the back. Once again, stabilizers, not levelers. Those should not have much pressure put on them at all, just enough to take a little weight off of the rear of the camper, and this will help minimize the movement that you feel in the unit whenever somebody is walking around. Both of these are 12-volt controlled motors in here. The rear jacks have an override. You can use the crank handle given to you separate and install it on the driver's side to manually crank that jack up and down if the motor were to ever fail. And on the front landing gears, it has a crank handle as well. There's a hole on the passenger side through the LP compartment that you can stick that same crank handle in there and manually operate that jack system. In that front compartment, we have the motor for our front landing gears. You can see our post right here where that override will come in, and that post will go in and lock into there, and it will turn both of the landing gear jacks. It is a single motor that runs that system. Here we are in our front compartment. There's a lot in here, a lot to go over. It can be kind of overwhelming, but it's fairly simple. So here we have our smart solar charger control system. This is to go with our solar panels up top, and it converts that solar power into charging power for our 12-volt system. So it charges our batteries whenever we're getting sun on those panels. Along with that, we have our RV solar disconnect. This is if we want to shut off that solar charging system, we would go ahead and just turn it to that off position. If we want to keep that on, we want just leave it in that on position. Now, if we ever are charging our unit or storing our unit not plugged in, and we want that solar system to charge whenever the sun is making contact with the panel, we want to make sure that we leave that on and it will continue to charge. Once again, we shut it off, that solar system is not going to do anything. Now below that is our battery disconnect. This panel right here is basically disconnecting the battery from the rest of our system. So whenever we store our unit not plugged in, we want to turn this system off. And this disconnects and conserves the power on our battery. But the RV solar system will still charge it even though this disconnect is off. So that's how you want to set it up. Storing unplugged, solar system on, disconnect off here. If we're plugged in to shore power, you can shut that solar system off. It's not really doing much because our converter system is charging our battery from the plugged in source that we have. If we turn this off when we're plugged in, it's not going to charge the battery. So if we're plugged in, this needs to stay on all the time. Over here we see our Lippert tire link system. This is a monitoring system. It is already pre-wired on your unit. All you got to do is buy the monitor with these sensors, install the sensors on your tires, and you can monitor your pressure of the tires as you're traveling down the road. In this big box right here, we'll find our battery, and up here we'll find our inverter prep. Our inverter prep is pre-wired system. An inverter changes voltage from 12 volts to 110. So you can power small appliances like your TV or phone charger or other outlets throughout the unit, but you'll only be given as much life as the battery will supply. Your solar system can keep up with a portion of it, but it's not going to run it forever. So you would use this in the event that you are dry docking and you don't have a place to plug your unit in. Here on the driver's side of our unit, we have one of our propane tanks. We have another propane tank on the passenger side. These propane tanks have a dual propane regulator on them. That is an auto changeover. If you select one of the two tanks with the dial and run that tank, eventually it will run dry, and that indicator will give you a red signal. When it runs dry, it will automatically swap over to that secondary tank and use the propane in that system without skipping a beat. Of course, when that tank runs out, you will have to fill both, but you can take off the empty one in the meantime, use that other selector, and you can refill it. Here we have our pass-through bay right here. We have two motion sensor lights. You'll notice a little switch on them with the number 1 and the number 2. The number 1 is on all the time. The number 2 uses a little motion sensor. That way, whenever you have this door closed, that light will turn off. You open it up, that light will kick back on once it senses motion. Here we have our Girard tankless water heater system, providing you with endless hot water. This is a propane system. It uses propane to heat our water, and it is on demand. We'll go over more operation on that when we get to the control panel on the inside. This is the cover for our furnace. Once again, another gas operated appliance. This is just the exhaust right here. This is where you'll feel hot air coming out while it is operating. Same thing on our on-demand water heater. We'll go over the controls for that furnace once we reach the inside. Down here we have our sewer dump. This is where we'll hook up our sewer hose to the sewer dump connection at our campground or dump site. Let's go over the operation of the handles and all of our water connections in that compartment. So we can see up top we have our shower, external shower connection. We can use our quick connect coil hose on here. We line up the two little knobbies and we click it to the right, locks it in, and we can put a spray hose or something on the end of it to operate once we turn our water on. To disconnect, turn to the left and it will pull that hose off. Below that we have our winterization port. This winterization port is when we want to winterize our unit by adding antifreeze to our system so those pipes won't freeze. There's a whole process for this. We have that covered in a winterization video on our YouTube channel. That is where this valve comes in right here. It activates this fixture to the left for our winterization. Here we have our city water connection. This is where if we have a water fixture at the campground to plug into, we'll plug that hose into it. We can put an inline filter, come through the hole at the bottom of our compartment here and hook up our water hose here and then turn it on, and that will supply water to our unit. Off to the right here we have this blue cable with a cap. This is our rooftop satellite prep. So that's a wire, coax wire coming from our rooftop, already pre-wired, if we want to add a rooftop satellite system to our unit. We'll also notice this little two-prong plug. This is our side solar package right here. This connects to our battery system. If we wanted to buy a separate solar panel to put out in an area that would collect sun constantly, maybe we park our unit under a tree or inside for storage and we don't have a place to plug it in, we just plug in that separate solar panel, put it out in the sun, and it will help charge our batteries. This Key TV system, if we run it straight into the satellite port or a cable TV port, it basically eliminates us having to use any kind of boost whenever we swap from antenna to cable. We don't have to do all that. It's a smart system that recognizes what we're trying to do. It eliminates that antenna boost button from that coax plate on the interior. If you're new to camping, you may not know about that. Just know that all you have to do is hook up your cable coax to this port from the TV and scan for cable channels. If we have an outdoor mobile satellite, we'll hook into this port right here. Or we can take our rooftop satellite and plug it into here as well. So here is where our tank valves are. We have our black tank flush, we have our black tank and our gray tank valves right here. Pulling out is open, pushing in is closed for those tanks. Now our black tank covers our toilet, all right? That's where all our sewage, toilet paper, stuff like that goes. That tank needs to stay closed all the time. Whether we're hooked up to a hose or not, we're not supposed to open that tank until we're ready to empty it out and flush that system. Whether our camping trip is over or we're just full on that tank, that is when we go to open it. So the procedure for that is we have our hose connection hooked up. Come over here, we open that tank valve. We let that system drain out. Once we're done, we hook up a water hose to our black tank flush system right here, and there's a spray port inside that tank that's going to help flush out that tank. This will help get most of the debris out of there and clean it out. And then what we want to do is we want to leave a couple of gallons of water in that tank. You can do that one of two ways. You can shut off your black tank flush, close your black tank valve, and just hold down the pedal on your toilet and add the water that way, or you can close this black tank valve, leave your black tank flush hose on for about 60 seconds, and then shut it off, and that will add several gallons of water to your system. From there, we want to go add some chemicals through the toilet to our tanks to help deteriorate anything else that's in there. If we were to leave this black tank valve open all the time, we would cause what is called a dry tank. That means any sewage that goes in there is going to be dried up and stick to your tank, and that tank would have to be replaced rather than cleaned, because you can't clean that type of damage to a tank. So we want to make sure we're leaving that valve closed and we're leaving some water in that system so nothing dries up on that tank. Our gray tank, however, is our shower and sink water. We can leave that valve open all the time as long as we have a hose connection to the sewer port at the campground. You can let that water drain out constantly and no problem there. If you care to shut it off and only empty it when it gets full, that's perfectly fine as well. This black cap down here at the bottom unscrews. This is where you'll pull your coax, your city water connections, anything like that. That way you can close your compartment door. We can see under our slide out, we do have another sewer port right here. This is a gray tank. We'll see our gray tank handle right here on the side. And once again, we can leave that valve open all the time as long as we're hooked up to a sewer connection outside. This is for your second gray tank on your unit. Our unit has a slide out. This slide out is cable driven. That cable driven motor is a 12-volt powered unit. So if you ever have any problems with it, you want to go to your 12-volt fuse panel, make sure the fuses are good. And we have other videos on how to override this system in the event that it goes wrong. It's identified by the cables on the top and the bottom there, and there also is some maintenance that we want to take a look at on those too. Here is our freshwater connection. Our freshwater connection is if we don't have a water port wherever we're camping at, and so we need water, right? So you pull this cap off and we put a water hose before we head out camping. We stick a water hose in there, we turn it on, and it will fill our freshwater tank. Our freshwater tank is an onboard storage tank that we can monitor through a meter panel on the inside that we'll go over later. Once we have filled that tank to the desired amount, we can shut that water off. We certainly don't want to put any more in there than what we care to use, because of course that's going to add extra weight to our unit. In order to use that water, we'll flip on a 12-volt water pump switch that will supply water to our fixtures from that tank. Now we also don't want to leave that water in there if we're not using it, because that water will become stagnant. Under our unit, we have a white hose connection with a valve that we just open up, and it will drain the water out of that system. We'll also notice underneath our rear of our unit, we do have a sewer hose container right here that we can store our sewer hose in. Here we are on the rear of our unit. We have our 50 amp supply right here. This is where we plug our power cord into. In order to release it, slight turn to the left and we can pull it out. To reinstall, we line up the plugs properly, slight turn to the right, and we lock it in. We have a little retainer ring on here we want to go ahead and tighten up to keep that plug from falling out. Before we plug in our unit right here, we want to make sure that we're not actually plugged into our 50 amp connection at the park, because that will cause some arcing right here. We also want to make sure that our AC units are turned off so we don't cause a surge whenever we do plug that system in. So plug this in first, then your shore power at the pole, and also make sure that your system is off. Up top, we can see our Lippert on-the-go ladder bracket right there. That is our bracket. We can purchase the Lippert telescopic on-the-go ladder system, and easy storage, but it will open up and install with two hooks up at the top so we can gain access to our roof. Now, why do we need to gain access to our roof? because we need to check our sealant every 60 to 90 days. That means getting up on our roof, checking for any peeling, cracking, openings, anything that can allow water into our system, into our RV, that we need to reseal. So we find those spots and we reseal them. It's all preventative maintenance. We also have that on all of our corner moldings, around our lights, our windows, and so on. We have silicone sealant there as well. We need to check all those spots every 60 to 90 days for any cracking, opening, peeling, or deterioration of those sealants. We also need to check our rubber after we take a trip. Any tree limbs or anything that can catch that rubber and tear it will be an opening in that rubber that we need to take care of right away so we don't allow water into our unit. Manufacturers do not participate in water damage that is due to lack of maintenance. So just like changing the oil in your car, you're doing preventative maintenance on your unit to make sure it lasts for years to come. We're also pre-wired with our Keystone camera ready system. This is pre-wiring for that backup camera that you can use to monitor while you're traveling down the road or when you're backing into your spot. We'll also notice here at the bottom we have our receiver hitch with tow hooks. This is tow capable, so we can add a trailer or something on the back to tow our golf cart or whatever we wish, and we have a 4-way plug there for our lights. On our passenger side, we can see our hole right here for our crank handle to override our landing gears that we talked about earlier, and we have our propane tank, and this is where our selector valve is for that dual propane tank regulator, that auto changeover. In our front pass-through compartment, we have a GFCI breaker right here. This is that outlet that's going to control and be the main breaker source for any GFCI protected outlets, mainly here in the outside. Those outlets are protected because they are near a water source, because we're outside, right? And if they were to ever trip, we want to go to that GFCI outlet right here and reset it. We can also test that system from that port there as well. So if our outlets outside aren't working, go here first, then to our breaker panel. Below it, we have our Key TV system. That Key TV system is provided another port right here where we hook our cable connection. Over on the other side, we hook this connection to our TV and we can scan for channels, or if we're using a satellite port, we hook it to a receiver and then to our TV so we can catch DirecTV or Dish Network channels. Under here we have our awning. We have our 12-volt powered awning. Flip of a switch, that awning will go out and back in. Now, a couple things we need to be aware of for our awning. It's a sunshade only. It is not intended to shield us from rain. If water collects on top of our unit, it will collapse that awning. If strong winds come in and blow this awning, it will fold over and cause an insurance claim. So we need to make sure during bad weather or high winds, we roll our awning in so we don't cause any damage. So make sure you are doing that. If you are leaving your unit for an extended period of time, better be safe than sorry and roll that awning in. Now, another thing that we need to do during normal operation of our awning is we need to pitch it. We need to tilt that awning one way or another. And when I say one way or another, I mean you can do the front or you can do the back. Most customers do the back, because this is a general area where you might be. We do that because we're going to have AC runoff. AC has condensation. It's going to go ahead and drip. We might have light dew on that awning, whatever. That water has to drain off of that awning. If not, once again, it'll puddle up in the middle and that awning will collapse. Really easily done. You can go to the front or rear arm and just pull down right here in the middle where it's hinged, and our awning will tilt to that side. Whenever we're done, we're ready to pick up our awning, just lift it back up and we can roll our awning back in. Of course, we have outdoor speakers out here. That'll be one of our zones on our radio on the interior that we'll talk about here shortly. We have our entry door. Our entry door has friction controlled hinges, so you're going to feel some resistance when you open and close that door. That's so if the wind blows, it doesn't slam that door shut or slam it open, one of the two. And we also have a screen door on here we can detach from our main entry door, close it, lock it into the frame, and we have our screen for nice weather. When we want to lock it back in, just click it back onto that main entry door. Now here we have our Lippert solid steps. Our solid steps are real nice, but there's a couple things we need to know. The steps, whenever we're pulling them down, want to make sure our entry door is fully open. So we have our stored position here. When we store it, we open that lever up, make sure it clicks past our frame right here. We have our two joints and then we give it a little tug to make sure that it's not going to go anywhere. We can close our door. When we're taking it out, pull that lever and drop our stairs down. Now we want to do our stairs after we have leveled our unit. Reason being is now you have to level your steps. We want to make sure that we have our steps properly leveled, and we can do that down here at these legs. We pull the pin out and we can choose the hole that's necessary to level our steps out and put that pin back in. It's very important because number one, safety, we want to make sure our steps are level when we're moving into our unit. But another thing is if we don't level them properly, this frame can hit the bottom frame of the door and our threshold may not line up properly, causing issues with closing this door. So make sure that we are leveling our steps properly so we don't cause any damage to that door. Underneath our unit, on this unit that happens to be behind the steps, we'll see a red and blue line sticking out of the bottom. These are our low point drains that we would use to drain water out of our plumbing system when we're prepping for winterization. Also here under our awning we'll find a vent. This vent is for our range hood over the stovetop on the inside. This range vent right here can be open and closed. It's got two little plunger ports that you can push down to close it and seal it off so no insects can build any nests in there. Whenever we are using that range hood vent over our stove, we want to just stick our fingers in there and pop it open so the air can exhaust out. If we don't, that air is going to stay inside the unit. And on the rear of our unit, we can see we have those electric stabilizers from LCI that are mounted in the back, and once again, only for stabilization. Walking into our unit in the hallway, we have our control center. This is where we can run our slide out in and out and our awning in and out. We have our switch for our interior lights as well as our awning lights outside. All 12-volt control components. If we have any issues, we want to check that 12-volt fuse panel. Down below, we have our monitor panel for our fresh tank, our battery system, and our black and gray tanks. This little meter will tell us what value that is at, and we have our 12-volt water pump right here, and that is once again to pull water from that fresh tank system. Now you will see a little fault light here off to the side. You can ignore that because you do have the Girard tankless water heater system, so that's not of any concern on this panel. Here we have our Furrion thermostat. This controls our air conditioner system in the living room area. We would hold that button down and it will eventually light up that display, and it would go ahead and initiate our AC system. We can see our first option we'll start with at that mode center is our cool option. We'll start with our cool option first. Our cool will cool the air throughout our unit. We of course set our thermostat to whatever point we want it to be, and we have our fan speed options. We have low and high. For low and high, that fan will run all the time. Now whenever we want that fan to cut off, whenever the compressor cuts off, much like we likely do at home, we have it on auto. That system will shut off and on with the compressor. Our next mode is our heat mode. Our heat mode activates our gas-powered furnace on our unit. We choose our set point and our heater will come on whenever necessary. There is fan speeds on here, but it does not change the fan speed on that furnace. It is a single fan speed on there controlled by the furnace board. Our next mode is our fan mode. Our fan mode simply circulates air throughout our unit without cooling it or anything. This will come out of our rooftop air, and we can just change from high to low to control that fan speed if we wish. That fan will stay on the entire time when we have it in our fan mode. Our last mode is our dry mode. Our dry mode is like a dehumidifier. We can choose our set point and it will cool our unit down to that set point, and it will continue to cool past that but alternate every 6 to 10 minutes off and on. That way it doesn't drop that temperature too low and freeze you out of the unit, but it still dries the air in your unit. Another thing to note with our furnace is that the air is going to come out of the vents on the floor. It's not going to come out of the rooftop air. Your only rooftop air is going to be your fan and your cool and your dry. Your heat will come out of those floor vents from the furnace. In our living room area, of course, we've got our TV, and behind it we have our cable ports for that Key TV system, providing us with cable or satellite, whatever we're using, or our air channels from our air antenna. We also have our Furrion radio right here. We have zones 1 and 2 that control the inside and outside speakers. And we have Bluetooth, we have CD player, multiple options on that system. Speaking of air antenna stuff, we have a Winegard Air 360 on our unit that also has the capability of providing us with a Wi-Fi boost if we upgrade to a router system. That router system is simple. You buy it, you pull off this little cover on the ceiling in here, and you insert the wires, and you have a router. Now this can do one of two things. You can use it to boost the Wi-Fi that the campground provides, or you can get with a cell phone provider, purchase a plan, and they will give you a SIM card to put in there, and you'll have it wherever that Wi-Fi is available through the cellular company. In our kitchen, we have our standard 110 microwave, and we have our glass top right here to add more counter space over our oven and stove. We can open it up like this and have access to our 3-burner stove. Whenever we're traveling, we need to make sure that this glass is down. That way it doesn't fall down and break in travel. So we have our stove top. We have a button over here on the side we can turn on for ambiance on those lights. Hit it down to the bottom, and it'll also light up our oven down there. Now to turn on our stove top, we would turn whatever knob we want to use for each burner and turn it to this little fire icon right here, and then initiate our igniter. Of course, we want our propane on, and our burner will ignite and run and heat our stovetop. Now, one thing to remember is before we operate, let's say, our furnace or our tankless water heater system, we want to come to the stovetop first. And this is for if we have a fresh camping trip. We just pulled our unit out of storage, or our tanks have been off this whole time, or we just got a tank refilled. You're going to end up with air in your propane system. Once you initiate that tank and turn it on, air is going to be trapped in here. It's going to dissipate if you've stored your unit and had the valves off. And that's okay. So what we want to do is we want to come to our stove top first. We want to go ahead and turn it to that fire icon, and we just want to keep clicking until that burner lights. And we can also use a long stem lighter on there if we want, because this can take up to 30 to 60 seconds depending on how much air is trapped in that system. So propane, long stem lighter, or use our igniter right here, hold it to it until it lights. Once it lights, we're looking for a clean blue crisp flame around that burner, and that will tell us that our LP is burning correctly and rich, and we've likely gotten all the air out of the system. From that point, we should be good to go ahead and run any system we want for the LP. And we do this because it's less likely that we'll run into a fault when we activate our furnace or our tankless water heater system. And it's also going to make our oven a whole lot easier to light as well. Our oven steps, we would simply open it up. We're going to turn our temperature to the fire icon right here, same as we did our burner tops. And then we're going to go ahead and hit that igniter. Once the pilot has lit, we're going to go ahead and keep it lit for about 30 to 60 seconds, warming up that thermocouple, and then we can turn our oven temperature to whatever our desired temp is, and it will light that burner tube. Once that's done, close our oven door, cook, and when we're finished, turn that knob off. Now you will also notice whenever our knobs are turned on, this ring around it will turn red, letting you know that that knob is in use and gas is coming out. So it is kind of a nice feature to have that little switch on with the lights, giving you a warning in the event that it is on. We also have our range hood oven vent right here. Remember the vent we talked about outside that needs to be open in order for this to vent out. We kick that switch on there and the vent will exhaust, and we also have a 12-volt light here as well. We have a 12-volt refrigerator installed in our units. This one is a Furrion. We do have a control knob here to go from cold to colder to off. Whenever we store our unit or we're done camping, one thing we want to do is we need to make sure that we are defrosting our unit and cleaning out our refrigerator. These do not have drain tubes in them. So when we defrost our unit and that ice melts, we're going to end up with a puddle of water in here that we need to get out with a towel. If we don't, it's going to leak out and it's going to damage the wood all around this refrigerator, and warranty is not going to cover that type of damage. So make sure we're doing that. And in our refrigerator, make sure we're wiping it down real good. When we're done, we can leave these doors open, let it dry out, and this will also help reduce the opportunity for mold and mildew to grow inside our unit. and once again, getting the water out prevents any damage to our wood panels around it. In our bunkhouse area, we'll find our 110 breakers and our 12-volt fuses. This is the center that we would go to in the event that we're having any issues with any of our 110 appliances. We come to the breakers. Any of our 12-volt components, we go to our fuses right there. Mounted behind this box is going to be your converter. That converter is basically a battery charger that charges your battery. Remember we talked about that with the battery disconnect? We're plugged into shore power. That system is changing 110 voltage to 12-volt voltage to charge that battery system up. Once again, it is mounted behind this 110 12-volt center. In our living room, we can see our ceiling assembly for our AC system. We have this vent right here at the bottom. You can open it up. That's what's called a quick dump valve. That will go ahead and bleed air out into this main area, and air will not travel through our ductwork that we have on our unit. So most commonly, you're going to have that vent closed like it is right now, so air can circulate and blow out of our ceiling vents throughout our unit. There is a screen right here. This is our filter. We want to clean that every now and again and make sure we're not restricting airflow to our AC. We can also notice next to our stove and oven, we have our COLP detector. This is a safety device to warn us of any hazardous gases in our unit, such as CO or LP. We should test it by holding this button down and making sure that it is operational and chirping. That way we can be sure that that safety device is working properly. They do have an expiration date on them, so you want to make sure that you're checking that, and you want to replace it whenever that time comes. Now we also have our smoke detector in our unit, just like our one at home. We want to check our battery in it and also make sure our fire extinguisher is properly filled. So a couple things to go over in our bathroom. Our shower, normal fixtures right here. We have our hot and cold. One little tip that we have on RVs is we have a on-off right here on our shower head. So this is whenever we are dry camping. We're trying to conserve the amount of water we put in our tanks because we don't have a dump site there. Or we're trying to conserve the amount of fresh water that we're using out of that tank. So we would turn our shower head off and on in between cycles. You know, we rinse off or we get wet and we want to soap up. We turn that shower head off to soap up and then back on to rinse off. We can just click the button up here to do that rather than having to mess with our fixtures here and find that sweet spot in the hot water. One thing I'll tell you is whenever you turn this back on, there will be a quick shot of cold water, so turn it off to the side, and within a couple seconds, you'll have that hot water flowing. We do have a 12-volt exhaust vent up here. That fan, when you crank open the vent, kick the fan on. This is to help exhaust any steam or anything in this bathroom. It's suggested you turn that on to reduce the risk of mold or mildew in the bathroom area. We also have our RV toilet here. RV toilet has a foot pedal to activate it. If we're doing number one, our liquids, we can just flush that toilet right off the back. Number two, solids, we want to fill this bowl up a little bit. So you'll barely push that pedal down to where that ball valve at the bottom doesn't open up and fill our bowl with enough water to be able to flush the solids down. If we don't put enough water in our system, it can cause some clogging in our toilet and piping. So fill that bowl up whenever we go to flush that. This is also where we'll go ahead and add water to our black tank system after we flushed it. If we don't want to use the black tank flush method, we would go here and just hold that pedal down and add several gallons of water. We'll also drop our chemicals through here to add to that tank as well, so we can make sure it is decomposing anything that's left in there. We want to be certain we only use RV toilet paper. That way it degrades properly in that tank system. And also put our chemicals in there on a regular basis. We don't want to put anything other than our liquids and solids that would normally go in a toilet in there. Nothing that we would normally put in our household toilets like feminine products or anything like that, because that can get caught in our drainage system on the RV. Also here in our bathroom, we have another GFCI outlet with that test and reset button like our one in our front compartment. And we also have our Girard tankless water heater monitor. This is where we would go to turn that system on. And we also have our Celsius Fahrenheit button right here to be able to swap between the two, and our controls to run it up and down. Now the initial temperature that you'll see on this monitor is what our set point is at. Once we activate our hot water, it's going to show the output temperature, which would be the water coming out of the tank as it is heated. Now you'll see several icons pop up at the bottom. Bottom right, you'll see a shower head icon. That means that the hot water is on somewhere in the unit. On the bottom left, we'll see a little fan turn on. That means that the blower is activated on that water heater. And in the middle, once that flame ignites, you'll see a little flame pop up, and that shows that everything is initiated and it is heating our water. Once again, on demand, as our hot water runs, it will run, but the system automatically shuts off after 20 minutes of use. So if we're using that water for 20 minutes, it's gonna turn off on its own. To reset it, turn the hot water off and turn it back on. A couple of things to go over in our master bedroom. Of course, we have another TV backer for our television, as well as a key TV for our satellite or our cable antenna. And we also have our second air conditioner on our system. This is a Furrion air conditioner. Our ceiling assembly right here is where our controls are. There's no thermostat for this one. So the air is only going to be mainly for our bedroom. We do have our ductwork where that mid AC will blow air through here, but our front AC we would control right here. We have our thermostat to go from cold to colder, and we have our fan option, which once again is just going to move that air around. It's not going to cool it. And then we actually have our cool option that we would turn to if we want to cool that air. Now this one has that same dump mechanism that the middle one does, but this one isn't going to be connected to our ductwork. So we want to leave this one open and allow our air to come out. Now on this one, it does have a heat option, but that is if you had a 110 heating element on here, which from the factory they do not. So for heat, you're still using your furnace on that thermostat in the hallway. This one does have another screen right here for our filter. We want to make sure that we're cleaning that regularly.
Well, we hope you found that resourceful, but wait, there's more information on our Great American RV YouTube channel. This channel right here, find the playlist HAPS Helpful Hacks. We go over different products in this unit, and we'll take a deeper dive with more diagnostics, more information, as well as helpful tips when you're out camping. Tell your buddies, tell your friends, like, share, subscribe, do all those awesome things on YouTube, TikTok, wherever you found us, and keep watching here at Great American RV Superstores, where we bring the how-to you.